we live in an online world that tells us how to think and how to feel at all times. But if we were to disconnect from that world, where would that leave us? Who would we be? Have you even met that person? I don't think I have. This thought process was playing on my mind the other morning, and so I sat my phone down on my desk, I pressed record, and I word vomited, but in a useful way, which is actually quite out of character for me. And amongst this barrage of yap, I made a decision, which again is quite unusual for me as an overplanner and underdoer. I said in this video that I wanted to change my life in 30 days. But I don't think I actually want to do that. I think basically, when it all boils down, what I was saying was, I just want to rediscover my real life. Or specifically, I want to discover it. I grew up in a traumatic environment, and I think that sort of contributed to me never really developing a presence in my real life until honestly very recently. So the process of discovering myself is nothing short of an archaeological dig, which I don't think I have the qualifications to undertake, but for some reason I was very motivated to do it when I filmed this video. That motivation has since waxed and waned a little. I think the thing that I realized at this point was that I'd been spending my time doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet feeling like I was doing so much. And that was because I'd cultivated an environment in my head that relied on overstimulation as a form of escapism. And that served a purpose for me during worse times in my life. But at this point, it's unnecessary at best and damaging at worst. It's just not serving me anymore. And on top of that, it's exhausting. And before we get into the video, I'm going to cover a couple commonly asked questions, or common comments made. Number one, it's very dark. Yeah, it is. It's winter in New Zealand. It's currently 9 a.m. and I have my light on. This is just what it looks like. I'm sorry. Two, you talk weird. I know. If you can't deal with it, then that's okay. I completely understand. I'm from New Zealand, the south of New Zealand. We do have a bit of a distinctive accent, but it's not for everybody, I've learned. So I think that's all I'm going to cover. Moving into the actual topic now. I've just been reflecting recently a little bit. Because honestly, as much as I can be disappointed in the fact that when I was a kid, I survived off of junk food to the point where if sugar wasn't running through my veins, it would mean that my heart had stopped pumping. And, I spent both my weekend days and my weekday days rotting in bed with toast crumbs on my chest and headphones covering my ears, just playing games and generally being a bit lazy. Watching YouTube videos, reading books. At least back then, I was only doing one of those things at once. If you've seen a dopamine menu, basically I was just living out my days indulging in desserts. But to be fair, that was probably partially because if I did try to multitask on my poor little, 2010 Toshiba laptop, it probably would have self-destructed and burned a hole through my lap. Playing a YouTube video and Toontown at the same time? Babe, you're being awfully optimistic. But I also think that this was partially because I hadn't been ruined yet. Not totally, anyway, because now, at this point in my life, if I'm not indulging in a dessert and a side simultaneously, watching a YouTube video and scrolling on my phone or playing a game or other things to do with my phone, then I'm bored. Or actually, I'm bored either way. I think the real problem is that if I'm not doing two things at once, then I risk entering my own head and staring into the eye of the beast and having to live in the present moment. Ew. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? I mean, who wants to do that? Not me. And also, back then when I was a kid, sure, I wasn't doing productive things or expected things, like going to school. I was doing things. I was making things. I love to make videos. I'd make crafts with my mum. I'd bake. I'd draw, which for me is synonymous with tracing pictures, because not everyone is born with artistic talent, but I still wanted to feel like I could draw Justin Bieber and not make him look like the Pack and Save stick man if I wanted to, okay? And what else would I do? I'd get absolutely engrossed in writing stories. I'd keep physical diaries, handwritten diaries. I'd dance around listening to CDs. And I'd even do things like I'd learn how to do the Cup song, and I'd film covers of myself singing. I think clips of those are now being used to get confessions out of criminals in interrogation rooms, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been in there myself. So would work though. But I think what happened is, it happens to all of us. I got older, and when you get older, I feel like the stress of life starts coloring your perspective on activities and on the world a little bit more. And for me, that meant that I stopped participating in any sort of creation or experience that couldn't be considered productive. I stopped doing anything fun just for fun. And in turn, I quickly lost just about every shred of connection that I had to myself and my personality, my friends, my family, my thoughts, you know, and honestly, my life. And that was so easy to do, largely thanks to the internet and social media. I joke that I was raised by computers because I just spent so much time favoring the digital world over the physical world growing up. But at first, it wasn't really all bad, I don't think. I mean, it was. Like, I definitely came across some things, a lot of things that a young child just should not be coming across. Even as an adult, I'm okay with not encountering some of the things that I saw back then. But still, I was generally in control when I was on my computer. If I was gaming or browsing or watching something, it was always a conscious choice to consume that I was making. I was the one clicking on things. I was like, games either came on discs or they took so long to install that it was definitely a very intentional decision to download and play a game. And there were those web-based flash games out that were kind of like the wild, wild west sometimes. But generally, I needed to know about a website in order to access it. Or it needed to be popular and therefore probably trustworthy enough that it would pop up when I typed in Games for Girls Online into Google. Or Yahoo. I feel like I used Yahoo back then. And not to mention, my communication with people on those games that I was playing was generally very monitored, in the sense that it was very limited, I feel like is a better word. So it was pretty much harmless. I think browsing was the closest thing that I could get to doom scrolling back then, but that consisted of me again consciously looking for things. I'd type in like Elvis Presley's life, or why do parents fight, or why do human beings cry? And also, why do they have 2 eyes and 2 legs and 2 arms? And that would result in me actually learning about something that I decided that I was interested in because I looked for it. I sought it out. It would lead me down rabbit holes, obviously. Like, I'd peruse random articles online and I'd like collect tidbits of information from studies and YouTube videos. And of course, I'd frequent Yahoo Answers. I mean, it's just the thing to do, to be honest. But I was generally in control. Like, I was choosing to see everything that I was seeing. And watching things was a very similar experience to just browsing on a search engine for me back then, I think. Short form video platforms didn't exist yet. So I'd spend my time on YouTube, and YouTube was like a form of discovery. It was where I was able to find songs, I was able to learn about things like history, I was able to watch tutorials for games or for editing programs. Although, of course, like, my friends would show me the odd brain dead viral video, and I was cool and cultured enough to know about things like Crazy Frog and the Harlem Shake and the I Knew You Were Trouble goat. It was still just different. I don't know. I feel like I didn't really start watching YouTube in the way that I do today. I don't think that process began until even like 2013, 2014. The people I remember watching first and like frequently were the Brit Crew. So I feel like it was associated with the rise of the Brit Crew. I went a rise in the time I spent on YouTube. But over time, things have changed on the World Wide Web, to put it lightly. Programmers have worked really hard to figure out how to keep our brains under lock and key, essentially. They've invented things like non-stop advertisements on platforms and rage bait, like recommending videos that make people angry or upset, and the doom scroll, mainly the doom scroll that replaced chronological timelines and that like inserts, you know, people you aren't following into your feed. And most recently, take for example YouTube. YouTube keeps optimizing its platform for engagement as a new hip sort of relevant example. Have you ever wanted to watch a video that contains just a stranger talking about their opinions while simultaneously reading what other strangers have to say about that stranger's opinions at the exact same time as you're listening to it, down to like the precise timestamp? Well, you're in luck, because all you need to do to access this feature on YouTube is watch a video on your phone. That's it. It's just there. You will constantly, second by second, be flooded with more and more brain candy, which of course YouTube hopes will keep you perky and bright-eyed and listening throughout the entire 5-minute long video that you're watching about how our shortened attention spans are making our lives. Oh, squirrel. The squirrels are the recommended videos. I don't know what I did with the graphics there. I might have just looked real stupid. Anyway, I was saying it's easier now than it ever has been, essentially, to stumble face first into information. Like, it's accidental most of the time, or it's mindless, you know, like you'll be sitting around, you're like, well, what do? I open my phone, I check Instagram, I check Facebook, whatever. And just everywhere you look online, there's unsolicited advice, opinions you didn't ask to hear, discourse about things that you don't even care about, but for some reason, you do. And of course, these are all things that the platform that you're on, your platform of choice, is showing you in the hopes that you'll get riled up about it or you'll get sucked into it. And therefore, you will spend longer engaging with posts on their app. And it's easier now than ever to lose yourself in that. It just feels so natural. And I mean, it's like, sometimes it feels useful, but it's just not half the time. Like, have you ever used the internet to try to help yourself make a decision? Trying to find information online that's relevant to you only stands to make things harder. Say you've searched for something like, how do I know when I'm financially ready to have a child? Oh, good luck. Like, you would have likely come across just an endless array of comments ranging from, I wasn't and I made it work and I love my life, so you should just go for it, to it's selfish to bring a child into this world, just enjoy your single child-free life, to I was financially ready but now I hate my life because parenting is so difficult. Think super hard about this choice because you'll probably regret it. And any relevant advice that you do come across, or any reasonably helpful advice that you see, carries the risk of it being completely unrelated to your life. Because despite people's best intentions, they just don't know your circumstances, right? They couldn't tell you apart in a crowd of people. How are they supposed to give you advice relating to your living situation or your background or literally anything when they just don't know what makes sense for you? They only know what makes sense for themselves. But they've got the megaphone, right? Because we've all got a megaphone online and they're like, well, I'm going to share what worked for me. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying there's so much happening. It really is. It's a tricky thing because we are blessed, right? We are blessed to have access to so many perspectives and so much information that we'd normally be sort of starved of. But I think it's simply too much to be inundated with all the time. We need to strike some sort of balance. And I think that it's really easy to, like, we have this onslaught of information at our fingertips all the time. So it's easy to forget things like the fact that it's probably more beneficial to speak to your friends about some things than it is to Google it. You know, if you ask your friends the same question, how do I know when I'm financially ready to have a child? You might actually, although you'll be accessing a smaller circle of perspectives and information, sure, you might actually be given some actual, like, relevant answers to your question. And I mean, not only that, you'd also probably be able to ask your friend, who you've already deemed as trustworthy, right? I'd hope so anyway, if you're calling them your friend, more questions, because you're in this back and forth one-on-one conversation. You'd be able to receive nuanced answers and sort of discuss how that relates to your situation with someone that actually knows your situation and who you are, right? And then you'd be able to make up your own mind in the end using this relevant advice that you got from a hopefully trustworthy source. And you wouldn't even need to pay $500 for a 30-minute consult with a random life coach that popped up in a Facebook ad on your timeline. It almost sounds too easy, especially because the life coach would probably just tell you that whenever the time is right, it's right, which is not particularly helpful. You know what I mean? A conversation with friends very often gives you the tools for problem solving. It gets your brain ticking, you know what I mean? While reading hundreds of comments on a screen gives you oftentimes nothing but more questions. And if anything, it puts your brain on a standstill because there's too much to consider. So you just, I'm going to turn that channel off, you know? But that brain candy of reading strangers' comments online, no matter how unnecessary and irrelevant these comments may be to you, it just feels so good. It's so tasty. Hank Green recently compared indulging in the consumption of endless information online to feasting on the empty calories that junk food provides. He did stipulate that his analogy wasn't exactly precise because information, even in the great abundance that we have it in, and even when a lot of what we learn online can be erased from our brains as quickly as it enters it because it's just a little overwhelming, information is still meaningful at its core. And if you have some sort of process to sort of picking the good bits out of the information that you're reading, I mean, you're learning. Whereas if you pick around in Lucky Charms to avoid the marshmallows and just eat the cereal, you're still eating junk food. But the comparison does stand, I think. Stands on its own 2 feet. Because if you view reading a bunch of comments as being the problem-solving equivalent of eating dry Lucky Charms for breakfast with a side of Pop-Tart. And then if you consider conversing with trusted people in your real life to be the problem-solving equivalent of eating avocado toast with a boiled egg on the side for breakfast, it becomes clear that one option is inarguably healthier, right? You're eating food either way, but one is healthier. And the healthier option is going to better prepare you for success. So I feel like it's still a good analogy. Things change so fast. Like, the internet was my safe space growing up. But it's since become a bit of a war zone, I'd say. Like, I hesitate to open a fun little casual post on Reddit in fear of what the comments section is going to bring up. In fear of the fun police showing up with their sirens blaring, like, please, we didn't do anything wrong. And you know, YouTube comment sections, they're great. They're all fun and games until you scroll down a little bit too far, you know, or until you start opening the replies to comments. And I'm scared personally to even step into the territory of X. Like, I don't even want to see the login screen. I haven't been on Twitter in years and years and years and years and years. I don't mind at all. I just feel like the internet no longer feels like a place for connection. With just the sheer quantity of people who now have access to each other, it feels like anyone who dares to leave a comment in a public space is essentially holding their shields up, running headfirst into an army of miscommunication and misunderstandings, and they're just hoping they survive. But that is kind of to be expected. I mean, whenever you leave a comment somewhere, you're essentially preaching to a crowd of people who don't know you from Tom, Dick and Harry, and you don't know them from Tom, Dick and Harry either. As much as these people don't know you, you don't know them, right? It's not the same as sending a video that you've watched to a friend and commenting in a private chat, because when these people that you're talking to don't know you deeply or don't even know you at all, they could reach any conclusion that they wanted to or they were inclined to from your comment and never be any the wiser as to what you actually meant or what you were trying to say or whether maybe you do agree. It just is all very unproductive. I mean, genuinely, you could be talking to anyone online. You could have gotten into an argument with Beyonce under a Reddit thread and you'd just have no idea to this day. Even if she came out and said, I'm actually Beyonce and I think you should shut up, you'd be like, well, I think you're lying, so maybe you should shut up. But no, it was actually Beyonce. Do you know what I mean? Like, we'd never know. And yet, these strangers online, these people that we don't know and that don't know us, these people who don't understand us as much as we don't understand them, they influence us. We're all constantly influencing each other. And it's weird. It like crosses over cultures and countries. And like growing up, I was so confused about some things that I'd read that just didn't relate to my life until I realized that I was reading comments from Americans. You know, like people complaining about the healthcare system. And I'd be like, I don't get it. Because in New Zealand, it's different. That's why. But like, I didn't even understand the arguments I was reading. But I'm still exposed to so much American chatter, you know what I mean? It's something that without the internet, unless I had like a relative or a friend that had migrated to America, I'd be none the wiser of. And despite that, despite the fact that in my real life, the things that I'm seeing online might not have that much relevance, it has all shaped me. It's sort of inevitable that the things that you consume, the things that you're reading, the things that are settling in your brain are going to become you. Like, I know for sure that I have been trained via my time online to question myself, you know, my own interests, my perceptions, my intentions, even my intentions, based on what I've seen random people on the internet say. And that makes me think, like, at this point, do I even know what's going on in my head? Like, do I know what I think? Or do I just know what the trend is? Do I know what I've been told that I should think? Like, who am I? Is every thought that I have just a product of groupthink? Like, it's a bit dramatic, I know, but honestly, I couldn't really tell you either way. In fact, I'd probably need somebody else to tell me what they think about the way I think in the comment section before I came to a conclusion. I don't want to form my opinion without putting my trust in the anonymous folk on the World Wide Web. Like, why would I trust the thing inhabiting my own cranium to make a decision about myself? That sounds risky. I'd rather see what other people think, you know? It doesn't make any sense, but it feels so right. And with all this floating around in my little empty cavity up here, it sort of clicked recently that I was essentially allowing myself to be a puppet for social media platforms. Not in every way, but in a lot of ways. Yes, I cultivated my algorithms by, you know, looking into things that interest me initially. And of course, these apps want me to see things that I have expressed interest in, because otherwise, why would I use their app? They want me to spend more time on the platform, right? So they're going to feed that stuff to me. And that way, they are working for me or working for us. But more importantly, this thought sort of overrode the other one. I was like, that's all they care about, though. Like, they just want me to spend more time on the platform, and that's it. These apps don't consider whether or not you really want to see something, you know, how it's going to make you feel, how it's going to impact your day or your life. They don't consider whether it's truly beneficial for somebody to see, whether it should even be on the platform, and whether they should be recommending it. All they consider is simply, will this keep them active for longer? I mean, if you've got like health anxiety, you bet your ass that because you stayed watching that one video about someone's liver exploding, you're going to get fed the videos like that over and over and over again. And that's bad for your psyche, right? That's bad for your mental health. But the app doesn't know that, and the app doesn't care. All the app sees is that you're watching these videos. I'm not saying that makes app developers like evil, or these platforms evil. I wouldn't go that far. I'm just saying that, like, I feel like these app developers, right, that I wouldn't let, you know, read my personal diary, do know an awful lot of intimate things about my interests, and they are sort of using that to their advantage. And that's smart, I think. It's fair game. We know that they're doing it. Like, we know that algorithms exist, and we know sort of how they're cultivated. And it's a trade, right? It's a fair deal. I'm making the money. They're keeping me entertained. But do you want to be brainlessly entertained? Like, what kind of life is that? I'm asking myself this as much as I'm asking you. I just feel like the realization that these apps do not want me to spend my time wisely because they'd rather spend the money that I make them when I don't did give me quite the ick. You don't care about my well-being, TikTok? You know what I mean? Because these apps, right? They're like, oh, you're spending 12 hours a day on our platform? Oh, no, that's great. Please do keep coming back and doing that more and more and more. You know, that's awesome. Thank you for lining our pockets. Keep up the good work. And meanwhile, you're sitting in bed rotting away feeling like shit because you've spent 12 hours a day, multiple days in a row, on this app. But it's so convenient. Like, at this point, what else do we do? Being online is so baked into our everyday lives that turning away from it almost feels wrong. And to be fair, old habits die hard. and because I had so much to mull over, right, with these thoughts swirling around in my head, I thought, I better ignore that. And so I quickly fell down the rabbit hole of playing a game on my computer with YouTube videos blasting in the background, droning on and in 2 times speed, because that is so much easier than doing anything is. But this whole time, in the background, there was just this niggling thought, this hiding away at the back of my head, this exploring away at my brain. It's a really gross image, but I couldn't drone this thought out, basically. And it was this thought that was telling me that I was doing nothing but filling a void. And it's true. How could I ignore the truth? I do that to fill a void, right? I am filling the void of my real life by making my entire life revolve around screens. But why? Why am I doing that? Well, because it's easy. And because it's safe, and because the algorithms told me to. They asked me very nicely. They said, please, will you sit down and watch these cat videos? And I said, yes, I will. Thank you. But I know that I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in having these thoughts and having this conflicting feeling about being online. And not only being online, but being chronically online. Like being more online than being a real person. But I started feeling very trapped inside this like bubble of comfort. But I realized that even if I did make the effort to burst out of it, I didn't really know what I'd do with myself. One thing about me, fatal flaw, I love to plan, I love to research, but I have the tendency to skip over one particular slightly important step, and that's action. I don't really do anything about it, which makes sense. I mean, action is difficult, it's strenuous, it's exhausting. It risks failure, but annoyingly, it's also how you learn and grow as a person, which is so not cool and so unfair. Action is dumb, and it's imperative to living a fulfilled life, which is dumb. So with these thoughts in my mind, I think lately I've had more thoughts in my mind than I have the rest of my life cumulatively. See, nothing going on up there. I went for a walk in the park on a beautiful winter day, which just means that it wasn't raining, and my fingers weren't so cold that they could snap off like icicles. And I sat down on a park bench that was only moist, not wet. This is really giving Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. It's giving feel the rain on your skin. No one else can feel it. But anyway, on that moist park bench that I was sitting on, I wrote down in a little notebook that I took with me a list of things that make me happy, which was quite difficult. I really had to disconnect from the idea of things that should make me happy, if you know what I mean. Because that might be waking up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, or waking up at 8 a.m. to go to your lazy girl job, or waking up at 1 p.m. to work on your business at home, depending on which influencer you ask. And instead, I just wanted to focus on what was actually true to me. And it didn't matter whether it was like the right thing to like, or whether it was trendy. I mean, this was meant to be a very basic self-discovery activity, but it was kind of complicated. But it worked either way. I jotted down cleanliness, movement, connection, freedom, control, learning about things like psychology, community, nature, trips, and stability. And these admittedly, they're not all fun things. They're not all very exciting, but they are real. They're true to me. Like even now, a few weeks later, I look back at that list and I'm like, yeah, it's a decent list. You wrote a decent list there, girl. And that's rare because typically I do exercises like these and I'm like, who do I think I am? Like even as I'm writing the answers down, I'm like, this is not, I don't think this. But then I turned to a new page and I wrote out improvements that I could make in order to achieve, you know, like a happier or more at ease state in my life, I suppose. And I had that same premise in mind of not doing what other people would expect or encourage. I was like, I really thought about what I reckoned would genuinely benefit me and like the people around me in my everyday life. And for this one, I noted down getting better at handling commitments. Problem solving, creativity, loosening control, being more spontaneous, socializing, taking action, communication, eating well, working on avoidance, and having less reliance on screens. And then I turned to another blank page and I wrote out the headline, action. And I left that page blank. I'm telling you, this is always a problem for me. This is where I struggle every single time, but this time it plagued me. I couldn't get a moment's rest without my brain being like, you've got something to work on. You've got some steps to take. I spent the next few days constantly aware of this void of action. And I was so aware of the fact that it made my life emptier than it ever should be. At a time in my life where I was finally able to enjoy the gift of being able to make my own life mine. It became so clear to me that I was actively choosing to do the opposite. I choose to hand my time over to strangers online. I choose to let these people influence me and think for me and form opinions for me and keep me company in the place of people close to me and keep me extracted from the present moment. I choose to live my life that way. It's funny to think that I almost had a fear of missing out on what was happening in perfect strangers' lives and in their brains, rather than in my own life, in my own brain. I was okay to miss out on that stuff in favor of keeping up with people on here. Tell me how that makes sense. I became very aware of this endless sense of urgency to consume the never-ending array of content and information that was out there. And more than ever before, I hated it. I hated the way that the internet and my phone and my devices were making me feel, because it was hitting me that I finally had good things in my life, but I hadn't just developed the habit of using the internet to avoid the bad things in my life. I developed the habit of using the internet to avoid life itself. And can you live that way forever? Even if you can, do you want to? I wasn't sure, so I collected my thoughts in the best way that I know how, which was, of course, by yapping to a camera. Okay, so my life has changed a lot, especially recently, for the better. And yet somehow, even though I'm living what is much closer to my ideal life than I ever have been, I am struggling. And why, you may ask? What's wrong with you may ask? I don't know. I've asked myself the same questions. To be honest, I'm not unhappy, which is why I think I'm in a good position to start making small changes. And deep down, I know this about myself, but when I think about what I want to do with my life and in my life, how I want to live my life basically, I tend to look far back into the past. I look into history. And to be clear, that's not to say that I want to feed a family of 10 kids on a rations diet and survive 2 world wars and never see my husband and oldest sons because they work from sunset to sunrise. I said that the wrong way around, but I guess they could do either way. And I definitely wouldn't want to do laundry by hand, kneeling over a stinky river. There are good things in the modern world. I'd prefer to stay here, I think. It's not that sort of stuff. It's not the basics in life that I think about. It's more so the stories and the anecdotes that I think about. It's fond retellings from older people about their time spent as a young person and what comes back to them. Because the memories that survive the test of time are usually the happiest and the most, I don't know if important is the right way to put it. They're the things that stick. So if you ask somebody that was once a young person what they enjoyed doing and they tell you something like, oh, I like to go out dancing with my friends, or I like to ride my bike around the neighborhood or around the city, I liked to go out and get milkshakes and visit the pictures, or I liked to watch live theatre shows, play the piano, or listen to records. I really enjoyed dating until I found someone to go steady with. I don't know, but I find that inspiring. I'm like, you did this with your life. You made the decision to walk out that front door and experience the real world, and those are the things that you liked. And I want to have things to say like that as well, and you ask an old person what they are thankful for that they did in their lives, and they might say that they're glad and grateful that they were able to get an education and pursue a career. They might say that they were glad to get married, to have children, to not have children, to travel the world. And they might even reminisce about times that maybe they didn't even know that they valued as much as they do now back then. Just spending time doing even nothing with parents or friends or siblings or whoever that have since passed away or moved away, or maybe you don't hear from as much. They might even comment on real basic stuff like eating dinner at the table with family, and maybe participating in a community event, raising a horse or a dog, or it could be anything. But I just think that that's so beautiful. I think that listening to other people's stories puts things in perspective so much. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. I think only if you're the same type of person and you also get emotional when you hear people talking about things that they did in their past, you'll understand. If not, you'll be like, I'm not picking up what you're putting down, shorty. But it's just, and there's lessons, like there's lessons in amongst all of this. Like the person you're talking to might say that over time they learned, you know, not to worry so much because everything works out in the grand scheme of things. Or they might say that the most important thing in life is to enjoy the journey and you know, stop and smell the roses and help others along the way. Like it's all these things that maybe we know, but we just haven't lived. I don't know how to explain it. And it's not that I don't understand that these anecdotes are highlight reels as much as, you know, like Instagram posts and stories that you see your friends make are. I get that. I know that they're probably better listened to than lived, these lives that these people endured, but it still just feels so meaningful. I have adopted grandparents. That's the title I've donned them with, but the older gentleman was a very keen photographer and videographer back in the day. And so they have all this genuine like video footage of their wedding day and their kids growing up, and they'd moved over from Holland to New Zealand, so footage of their friends back in Holland, the buildings back there, even their parents. I remember the older woman, her mum appeared in one of the clips. We used to have these movie nights that they would show the footage on a projector, and she saw her mum appear in one of these clips and she leaned forward and she went, "Oh, mummy." It just puts into perspective, I think, that the simplest things in life, you know, the things you don't even think about living without, are the things that end up being so prominent in your memory and so important to you as you age. But despite all that, I do understand that idealizing the good old days can be a bit of a misguided pastime, so I wouldn't say partake in that necessarily. That's actually the main discussion of the movie Midnight in Paris, which is a story that follows an author who is disillusioned with his modern life, and he yearns to live amongst the great writers of the past, but then he travels back in time somehow, and he discovers that it actually wasn't all sunshine and rainbows back then, and these authors were kind of weird, and so he comes back to the present day with a new lease and a new outlook on his modern life. That's kind of how I see this sort of thing, and also it's a great movie to fall asleep to. That's like the whole reason I mentioned it. Absolutely give it a try. I fell asleep to it weeks in a row at one point, and it was just the best sleeps I've ever had. So peaceful. You'll never sleep better. But with experiences like Owen Wilson's in mind, I feel just incredibly grateful that I do live in this modern world. And not only that, but I have so many opportunities in this modern world to have great experiences like older folk have. Nothing is ever perfect. Our world is far from perfect, but generally, like in general, speaking as like a broad generalization, we are very lucky. But maybe, I think, a little too lucky. Not that I'm complaining, do you know what I mean? But we have access to everything and anything in our pockets. And it's just almost too much. We have too much. Again, I'm not complaining, but I do think that in some ways it serves to devalue good things in life or other good things in life. I'm not saying that this outreach that we have is not good, but I think that, you know, real world community and knowledge and memory and things like that can sort of get swept under the rug, because these things do so much thinking for us and so much connecting for us, and they just require us to be so connected and so empathetic. Which, is this all terrible? No, like I find it very conflicting. I find it all very conflicting, this train of thought. I just feel like not only is the world very fast paced, but it's also now split in two. We have our online world and we have our real world, and that split means that both work and personal leisure time can feel all-consuming, and it's just a lot. But still, as Brit Monkey eloquently pointed out in their video, The Myth of the 1950s, it is unlikely that most of us would truly be happy living with less, or happier than we are now, at least. I feel like we kind of only get to feel like that because of the limitless options that we hold in the palm of our hands. Like the invention of cell phones and central heating alone has not driven the human race to depression and depravity. I feel like it's probably done the opposite for us. And I mean, you know, this is like a weird anecdote that I feel like I remember hearing. Tell me if you have heard this or know anything about this as well, but Lizzie Borden of Parents Killed by Axe fame. I remember hearing that she lamented about her father being rich. He was a rich man, but yet he did not feel like he was rich enough to afford to have plumbing installed in the house. And like, I remember also hearing that morning they ate something. It was like lamb stew. I can't remember what it was, sorry. But they ate something for breakfast that had been left out overnight, and it made them all sick. And I remember hearing that was kind of commonplace back then because, well, refrigeration systems have come a long way. Let's just say that. So hearing things like that, I just count my lucky stars that me in this first world country that I live in, thankfully, even when I lived in my car for a while, I I still had access to warmth with the heater. I still had access to running water 24/7. Basically, what I'm getting at with this whole rambly conversation, I'm so sorry. What I'm thinking, what my thoughts are leading to is that despite all the privileges that I have in life to allow me to live well and to live to some extent free, when I picture myself looking back as an old person, like these old people that I've spoken to who actually didn't have all these luxuries that I have in life, I can't imagine myself having much else to say other than it really is that damn phone, and that's a shame. And that's if I even look up from my TikTok For You page to speak. Like, I might be too addicted at that point. I might just be zoned in constantly. I mean, that is quite the I can't say that word. Over-dramatization. It's one z. My brain goes zuzza. Over-dramatization. What does that mean? Let's breeze past this. It's an over-dramatic thing to say, but it does feel apt. And I am concerned with the fact that I might look back and be like, yeah, there were some good times in my life, but most of it I just spent sitting on my phone. And this isn't only affecting my generation, or me specifically, and this isn't exactly scientific evidence, I know, but I came across this YouTube comment and it just shared a few sentiments that sounded familiar based off of what I see other people saying fairly regularly nowadays, but also sort of what goes on in my head. And this person wrote, they said, as an old dinosaur, a Gen X, raised way pre-internet, I have seen my own attention span plummet. I used to think that I was maybe exaggerating it or imagining it. Years ago, I tried a casual experiment. I put on a random YouTube video and I tried to watch to see how long it would take before my hands and my mind had that itch to do something else. At that time, I believe it was 2 minutes. I haven't tried the experiment again, but I'm down to seconds, not minutes. If it's horrifying to those of us who grew up long before this, I can't imagine what it does to our younger generations, especially the kids who don't know anything different. I'm not a scientist or a medical professional of any kind, but I can only imagine that this must be affecting their brains and their development. You cannot read or function in life if you can't focus for less than a minute. It's impossible. And that anecdote, like I said, it caught my eye because I guess as great as times are now, and as much as extraneous factors have always influenced how people think and feel and act, it does feel like this modern age just has a way of affecting your sense of self. This comment, it spurred me to look into the idea of the internet affecting our development a little bit further. And in doing so, I came across this article shared by Lesley University. It was entitled "Perception is Reality: The Looking Glass Self." Let me know if you know what musical that's from. I kind of just left you guys on a cliffhanger, so if you want to help out the people in the comments that are confused. But anyway, this article, it explained that the looking glass self that they'd mentioned in the title describes the process wherein individuals base their sense of self on how they believe others view them. Using social interaction as a type of mirror, people use the judgments they receive from others to measure their own worth and values and behavior. The rise of social media makes the process of the looking glass self infinitely more complex. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook and the like make it possible to connect with others in ways never before imagined. However, this exposure has led to an ever-increasing number of mirrors, thus proposing new questions about the development of self. Unique qualities of the cyber self raise a host of psychological concerns and issues. Individuals may experience a greater sense of urgency to return to or to remain in digital spaces. They may be increasingly involved in the curation of their online identities, possibly at the cost of developing their real-world selves. The host of digital platforms involved also brings into question whether one's identity may become splintered or whether developmental problems will result. All these consequences are more severe when digital users are young or in their teens. But the article does go on to clarify that when YouTube video producers, which is the official title that I'm going to call myself from now on because it sounds so distinguished, dignified, when YouTube video producers were interviewed about their content creation practices and its influence on their sense of self, they offered a range of positive responses. Results included a sense of gained confidence, enhanced creativity, overcoming of major social hurdles, increased sense of self-worth, a strengthened professional image, feelings of altruism and helping others through their content, and interacting in a positive social space. They said whether digital platforms are ultimately a help or a hindrance to self-identity remains to be seen. So although this is inconclusive, and it does sort of beg the question of whether nature or nurture has a greater impact on a growing person, I did find that article to be a very interesting read as far as my own experience sort of growing up online goes. Because I know for a fact, as the author highlighted, that I was able to delay developing my real world self thanks to the abundance of avoidant activities that I could pull myself into online. And that did, of course, turn out to be a little bit detrimental when I was inevitably forced into the real world, because it's got to happen at some point. And at that point that it happened for me, I had no real sense of identity. But it's hard for me to sort of pinpoint the exact cause of something like that, though, because I think that a lot of my experiences growing up can be largely attributed to trauma. And so I can't say for certain how I would have turned out without the stress that I went through as a young person. Like, I can't even confidently say that I would have spent as much time online as I did, as I chose to when I was young, if I had a more inviting life to live. You know, if it was more welcoming for me to step into the real world. But I have been able to successfully play catch up either way. So I don't know if my internet addiction, if you would call it that, sort of stunted me forever. I don't know if I would say that. I think if anything, it just adjusted me. Like, for example, I definitely noticed that urge they said to return to digital spaces, and that could have only developed from the excessive amount of time and energy that I spent in those digital spaces. But I guess that without the internet, an urge like that could just surface as the urge to return to my bedroom instead. Do you know what I mean? Like, that would probably be less fun, right? Maybe a little bit less addicting, but it still has the same desired effect of disconnecting from the real world. You shut the door and it's out there now. Do you know what I mean? And I have mentioned, and so is this article, that of course growing up online, spending a lot of time online isn't all negative. So in the end, I don't have the answer to, you know, whether spending a lot of time online is a one-way ticket to being a ruined person. I don't know if anyone has that answer, but I do think that it's only natural. This is the conclusion that I come to. It's only natural that when you spend a lot of time doing one thing, obviously that does take away from time that you could be spending doing other things. And you can genuinely fill up entire days on devices without having to step away. Now you can even order food on devices and so on. So I think that the theory that internet immersion could be damaging to someone's real life does hold some weight, but I'm no scientist. But with all of that said, I know that I'm not the only one who can relate to the sentiments shared in that comment that we read, the things that I've spoken about today in Lesley University's article, nor am I alone in craving simplicity at times. Like, people are choosing to use dumb phones instead of smartphones. And there have always been people who would prefer to use like a manual hand beater over an electric one, or listen to records rather than CDs, or use Spotify, or, you know, who would rather bike to work than they would take a car. But still, I'd be willing to bet that most of these people wouldn't be keen to like up and join an Amish community at a moment's notice, because they are happy enough with their involvement in the modern world. But I know that for me, if a time machine appeared in front of me, hell no, I'm not stepping into that thing. I don't want to go back to like helping the war efforts of the 1940s. I don't want to go forward to see triple-breasted women swim around town totally naked. Neither of those appeal to me. I like it here. And so I kind of came to the conclusion that pretty much all that we can do, right, with this knowledge that we have of the past and what is important in life is we can use that wisdom that's been gained by others to shape our present lives just a little bit more. And so to target my pain points with my freshly washed hair falling absolutely beautifully, naturally, with no encouragement needed whatsoever, I sat down to make a list of 10 things that I think I'd benefit from focusing on, except I ended up with 11. Because what happens when you create a draft and then you ignore the draft? Oh, yeah, you forget things. Yeah, wish I thought about that before. But honestly, this whole thing I think is better because it's not perfect. Like, that was kind of the point. And I wanted to note down things that would lead me to be somebody today that future me would thank me for being, but not to the point that present me was miserable. I came across this motto, I guess you could call it, a few years ago, and it's so incredibly simple, but it's actually helped me just go out and do a little bit more in life. Just, you know, push me slightly out of my comfort zone. And it's literally 3 words. It's just show up. So that's what I really kept in mind, that reminder that sometimes it is okay and it is actually enough to just show up. It's very simple, and it's also better than the alternative of not showing up most times. And it works. Like, thanks to these 3 words, I've had some great experiences and some okay experiences and some bad experiences, but importantly, I've had experiences, so that's great. We had some technical issues. Back to the rambling. I'm just gonna show you how my plan unfolded. And do keep in mind, I know that you've seen proof of me drawing this, so you know that I didn't enlist like a 5-year-old to create it for me. But if you do need to tell yourself that a small child drew this in order to like make it easier for you to look at or to make you judge me less, then please just do that. Yeah, I didn't even draw this. A baby did. You can pause this if you'd like to read everything that I wrote, but I'm not the type of person that works very well with challenges, which is why I threw the idea of the 30-day challenge out of the window as soon as I said it in that video, because I was like, I don't want to do that. They won't work for me. So what I wrote down were mainly just reminders. They were things that I could use to like check in with myself while I'm like slogging through life. You know what I mean? I mean, the title Be Happy is a reminder within itself. Not that you can be happy all the time, because that's a ridiculous expectation, but just like, it's a good state to strive to achieve every now and again. It's a good direction direction to be heading in, right? If you're walking away from the happy direction, then you might want to pivot so that you start walking towards happy again. That's all. And then the rest of it was just, it's like questions I can ask myself, is this balanced? Am I making a balanced decision? Is this authentic? Should I write this down? Should I discuss it with somebody? Have I been outside? Have I participated in movement? Have I eaten mindfully? Am I being present? Is this really something that I should be choosing? The aim was kind of relaxed structure. It's like, I've got a little pot plant, I've set it on the windowsill, and I'm just going to water it once a day. I'm going to take care of it. I don't need to like tie it to a trellis like a tomato plant and tell it, grow straight. You better grow straight. I'm just gonna like tend to it every now and again. And while I'm not sure, I can't say confidently that anything on my list will help me to rediscover my real life or my real self on its own, I do hope that it will at least lay the foundation that will allow me to live in a way that feels more tethered to who I am at my core. I'm also not sure whether this approach will be of any use to you, but hopefully you can find some value buried in there somewhere. I mean, I have been rambling about this for quite a long time, so hopefully I've said at least one thing that has made you go, oh yeah. What I can say though is that it has been a few weeks now since I wrote out this list, and it has been influencing my decisions. Have I made any drastic changes or improvements? No, absolutely not, no. But these are becoming sort of part of my self-talk. They're making me a little bit more aware of my behavior, which is helping me make incremental changes in my life that overall make things feel better. And change really doesn't happen overnight, especially if you're trying to solidify something as like a lifestyle change. There's no point rushing it. If you put it on the fast track, it's going to bounce back at you like a boomerang. You might as well just walk with it. So with my actions completed and all my rambling done, I could just end the video here. Maybe you want me to. I'm so sorry if you do. I'm not done. I wanted to sort of explore the idea of self-discovery and real-life discovery a little bit deeper. I wanted to dive into it a little bit further. And I know I get it, Hank. I'm a little information-addicted troll that lives under the World Wide Web, but I can't help myself, okay? Just let me live, please. It's been so much fun. But before we carry on, I do want to throw in a quick reminder that this whole video has sort of centered around the idea that you should be doing more of what feels right to you and less of what feels forced onto you by, people, online articles, videos that are telling you this is right for you. So don't let me tell you what the truth about self-discovery is. Don't let me tell you what's avocado toast and what's dry Lucky Charms. That's not for me to decide for you. But do listen to me yap if you'd like to, and maybe take the time to consider what you think about what I'm saying. Like think about what all of this means to you and what you reckon is the truth. And with that said, I know this is a bit ironic, but I did look up proven methods that are supposed to help you achieve self-discovery. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, alright? And the internet and media, other media like books and podcasts and whatever, they do spit out some gold sometimes. It's not like all you get are rocks and flies. It's just that if you stumble across something shiny and yellow in the streets, you don't really know if it's gold or if it's just like a polished banana peel unless you sort of pick it up and inspect it and weigh it. And what am I saying here? I'm saying that nothing is a one-size-fits-all approach. I know those gurus shouting at you in short-form content claim that there is a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, stop! You need to watch this. This video will change your life, but like, will it? Do you know what I mean? Like, do they really know what they're talking about for you? I think the internet so easily morphs us into this one, like, homogenous lump of people. And I guess that's because it's not quite as catchy to say, wait, please, give me a minute. I have something to tell you that may or may not be helpful to you, but I'd really like to convince you that it will be helpful to you so that you'll buy my extraordinarily expensive course. Please, just watch me for a minute. Meanwhile, the truth is that every single human being on this planet has a different way of thinking and moving and feeling. We have different motivations, different passions, different views on the world. And that's okay. That's great even. It just doesn't sell as well, so people don't talk about it as much. But I thought, what if I wanted to be a little bit more like my previous co-worker, who one early morning I said, "You must be a morning person." To which he responded, "Oh, I just love life in general. What do I do to start that process? What do I need to take in order to think like that?" And this is what I found. This is what the internet told me would help your average person discover or rediscover their real life. And to clarify, because I started researching this and I was like, what am I actually looking for? I'm approaching the idea of rediscovering your real life as meaning rediscovering the person that you were always meant to be that may have been buried over time underneath external stimuli, like the expectations of others or media or stresses in your life. So I say, rediscovering your real life to mean reconnecting with the person that you are at your core and relearning to interact with the things that bring you joy when you're not clouded by stress and swamped with quick dopamine hits. It might mean something different to you, but that's the way I approach things. And the number one thing that I found everybody talking about was very basic. And also, I mean, not to brag or anything, but it was kind of what I did. And it was, drumroll please, journaling. I know. Explosion, mind-blowing, journaling, what? I know, like I said, it's very basic, but there are definitely perks to this method. It's undeniable. For one, it's approachable for anybody, whether you're the type to want to create some artistic spread, a storyboard of ideas, or whether you're the type to just sort of put pen to paper and scribble out your thoughts. Journaling can work for you. I mean, genuinely, even if you'd rather just like open your notes app and whip out text-to-speech and just talk at your phone, you could count that as journaling. And I think it can be genuinely a very beneficial method of self-reflection and connection, because it can immortalize the thoughts that sort of just run in circles around your brain, you know, the thoughts that you can't catch. You get out the butterfly catcher when you're journaling and you fucking get them in there, and it means that you can capture those thoughts and you can analyze them a little bit. You can be like, oh, what a beautiful butterfly I've caught, or you can be like, oh, a moth, let it go, I don't want this near me. Or you can be like, ow, fuck, that's a wasp, oof, I won't catch those black and yellow things again, I don't like those. I think it allows you to sort of connect the dots in a way that thinking in circles, like I normally do, just doesn't help you achieve. You can see like conflicting thoughts, you can see ideas that maybe you didn't think were related until you wrote them down. And I feel like it can help you find some balance, some middle ground in those thoughts. And there are so many different approaches. Some people like to just write from the heart. Some people find it harder to start and they prefer to use prompts that help them sort of exercise their thinking muscles. My favorite prompt as a kid was, if you were the all-powerful prime minister for a day, what would you do for the world? Because for me, that one was always a real toss-up. Like, it really got my brain turning. I was like, shit, would I end world hunger? Strike a deal for world peace, maybe? Or would I cancel school forever? And now as a sensible adult, of course, I know that I would choose to cancel school forever. It just, some things do get easier with age. Makes so much sense. But if you need some prompt ideas, I wrote some down. You're so welcome. You could ask yourself, like I did, what makes me happy? What do I need to improve on? Action, por favor. Or you could just let yourself get carried away. How would I describe myself in 10 words? How would other people describe me in 10 words? Oh, that'll get the cogs turning. I have no idea. What gives me energy? How do I want to feel? What should I do to achieve that? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What are my fondest memories? What do I want to spend my time doing? What am I currently struggling with and why? What am I passionate about? What do I consider to be my purpose in life? What would I be proud to do, or what am I proud to do? What part of my work day or school day or free time do I enjoy the most? What would I do if I won the lottery? What could I talk about endlessly? And when it comes to journaling, there are no rules. The possibilities are limitless. Like, that list could literally carry on forever and ever. And I can almost guarantee that you could either add something to it or amend it to meet your needs better. And it's fun because you can answer the prompts from the perspective of the way you are now, or the way you were a year ago, or the way you were as a child, or all three. Like, you can really connect with yourself, or you could look back to a time where you did feel more connected to yourself and think, well, what was I doing? What was I feeling? What was I thinking? And you don't have to follow like a format or a schedule when you're journaling. I know some people would encourage you to be like, you should do it once a night, every day or whatever, and I just do it when I want to. But I have noticed, like, there's so many pros to journaling, but I have noticed one flaw, and it's the fact that journaling as a self-discovery method is incredibly susceptible to human error, because journaling is only truly helpful when you're nothing but open and honest with yourself. But it can be surprisingly hard to be vulnerable, even when the only person that's going to see what you're writing down is you. Like, the amount of times I've written down something and read it back and gone, well, that's great. I've drafted an outline for the Mary Sue protagonist of my next book series, but what about myself? Maybe I should have written a little bit about me, you know, because it's like I was dreaming when I wrote this. Like, I either can't do all this or I don't want to, is counting more than I can count. Or on the other hand, I've read stuff back and I've gone, geez, I know I'm not particularly happy at the moment, but did hopefully probably wasn't the best answer to the question, where do you see yourself being in 5 years from now? And in the past, I've even found that it's been near on impossible for me to answer even the most basic of questions. Like, what would I be proud to do? Oh, I don't know. I guess I'd be proud to climb Mount Everest. Or I guess I'd be proud to have a flawless nighttime routine, or be a model with a perfect personality. But I don't care about any of that stuff. Not really, you know what I mean? Answers like that, or thoughts running through my head like that, are part of what made me realize that I was sort of lacking some insight into my own life and my own thoughts. Because when I draw a blank on certain things, I just pull on things from other places, things that I've read or things that I believe that other people would expect or other people would enjoy, and I sort of leave myself in the dust, which is not useful. So then how do we improve the level of insight that we have into our motivations and our thoughts and our feelings if basic journaling just isn't the right key for the lock at this point in time? We might find that personality quizzes like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram test could help. I've seen VIA character strengths, that quiz mentioned online. We have the careers.govt.nz quiz that could help. I mean, there's like the big 5. There are so many of these tests to take online, and I mean, they're probably good jumping off points. But I think primarily they're fun. Like, they can be used as a tool, but they are fun. I find that I can get like fixated on the results that I got and what they mean within like the lore of the quiz, that world, rather than the real world. Like, I sort of fail to put them to use in the wider picture of things. Like, I take the Myers-Briggs test and I'm like, oh, I'm such a capable, can-do personality type with a wealth of versatile gifts, though sensitive and caring. I also have excellent analytical abilities and an eye for detail. But then I come back down to earth and I'm like, well, that's not all necessarily true, is it? Or it's not necessarily useful, but it is fun to read, right? And I do notice as well that when I take these tests, my answers change slightly, at least slightly, every single time, which is fine. Like, people are flexible and people do change day by day, but it's not, I don't know, I feel like these tests can kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, but they're probably, you can't just roll forever based off of these tests. Something that I read that apparently Matthew McConaughey said in a speech, which I cannot confirm or deny, but it could be easier overall, is to identify things that you actually don't like. I feel like that could produce really good results because, for example, I couldn't tell you the exact shade of my hair on the color wheel as a hex code, but if you like came to me and you threateningly held up a hair razor and you said, you better tell me exactly what your hair color is on the color wheel hex code, otherwise I'm gonna shave all your hair off. Which I hope you'd never say to me, because that would actually be really mean and very distressing. But I could definitely confidently tell you that my hair is not blonde, it's not brown, it's not purple, it's not green, it's nothing in that realm, and I wouldn't be wrong. Like, that would narrow things down a lot. And then from there I could say, well, it's not strawberry blonde, and I would still not be wrong, and I'd also be, again, a little bit closer to narrowing in on the correct answer. And then eventually, maybe I'd be able to keep my gorgeous #884C26 locks, according to the Photopea color care tool. So even at like the most basic level, simply writing a list of things that you dislike and then maybe things that you do like could give you a certain level of insight, at least, into who you are as a person. And you can ask dumb shit. You can ask anything, like, what kind of breeds of dogs do I like or dislike? What kind of mattresses do I like or dislike? What movies do I like or dislike? And if that's not your speed, I found a lot of things that you could try. You could try meditation, you could try to form new habits, you could try to restrict yourself from easy dopamine sources and just force yourself to work something out. And I mean, you could quite literally try anything, is what I realized on this topic. You could try traveling, you could move to a big city, you could move to a little rural town. But the one thing that I found myself thinking when I was looking at all of this is I was like, wherever you go, there you are. So if all of this is failing for you, or maybe it doesn't sound right to you, and you still have this deep-rooted urge for self-discovery, then possibly, and annoyingly, I know, what you really need might be time. I know, stop throwing the tomatoes, I get it. It's a bad answer. But it's true, like, rather than putting pressure on yourself to identify who you are and where you're going in life, right at this very moment, it could pay to allow yourself to have some more breathing room, to have experiences and to interact with more people and to see more things. I mean, like, it's possible that you're pushing yourself to find your dream job right now, except you've never even heard of it before. And maybe you're bored because you haven't discovered your favorite hobby yet. Maybe you're feeling lonely because you've yet to meet your lifelong best friend. And these are things that you kind of just have to eventually stumble into. Like, we are told that we should be following a certain trajectory in life, and we see other people adhering to that, especially on social media, in movies, even also in real life, to be fair. We see people, we see our peers hitting those milestones, and it can seem like they're doing it without a hitch, day in and day out. They're like, boom, 18, studying, got a girlfriend, whatever else kids do when they turn 18. Moving out, traveling, let's do all of it at once. But the truth is that life probably isn't panning out the way that those people expected either for themselves. There's no real ideal timeline in life, is there? Because there is no universe in which life can, or should even, pan out at the same time, in the same way, for every single person. That would be insanity, and so boring. It'd be so boring. That's why, there are like dystopian books about societies like that, where it's like you turn 16, you get plastic surgery, and you find your soulmate. And the protagonist of those books are never the people just going with the grain, because that's so boring. It's the rebels, it's the people that do things differently. That's where life experience comes from. That's what's interesting. It's a bit spicy. And imagine the things that you'll miss out on if you try to force yourself to find the thing that you're looking for right now. Or the things, I should say more realistically, because I feel like every single person is constantly, we're looking for so many things. But the world keeps spinning and your life keeps moving forward, even if you feel like you're not on track. And that's not a bad thing. If you can accept that and you can move with that, then you'll grow more than the people who have forced themselves into a box. And it will end up fine. Like, as a real world example, my counselor was married in a different career field and she wasn't happy, but she didn't make herself stick to things in order to be on track. She got a divorce. And she didn't even start studying to become a counsellor until she was in her 40s. Since then, she's pushed well past retirement age to continue her career and to teach at a local university as well, because she found her thing. She found her passion, but she didn't get there by racing for it. She got there by floating aimlessly towards it, just in that direction. Life led her to counselling. It led her to the place that she is in now. But it could have, to be fair, taken her down a completely different course just as easily. She could have floated down that lazy river and taken a left instead of a right, and she could still be just as fulfilled as she is now. Or maybe instead of becoming a counsellor in her 40s, she would have done it in her 50s. You can't predict these things. It's just life. You gotta roll with it. Which is not, I know it's not a fun answer. Like, the thing is, life is complicated. The one thing I know about life is that it's very complicated. And so the only meaning that life really holds is the meaning that you give it. And it's tricky because you can't really oversimplify something as complex as life without feeling like you're missing something, because you will be missing something if you do that. And that's a difficult pill to swallow for some people, including myself. I know it is for me, because I would really like for there to be this inbuilt purpose in life. That's what my brain craves. I'm like, what's the meaning behind this? But the fact is, there just kind of is no meaning. There's no purpose. The purpose of life is just to live, which leads me to the concept of ikigai. And you're gonna need to forgive me for my pronunciation for the rest of this segment, because I swear, I promise on my life that I look up and listen to words that I can't pronounce, especially in foreign languages, over and over and over again. And I really try. But for some reason, I just cannot replicate the sounds with my mouth. Even if it's in my brain, it's not coming out here. So I'm really sorry if I pronounce things wrong. And I will pronounce things wrong. But ikigai originated in Okinawa, Japan. And as good old Wikipedia explains, the term compounds two Japanese words, iki, meaning life or alive, and kai, meaning effect. When combined and sequentially voiced as gai, this results in the meaning a reason for living, a meaning for life, and what makes life worth living. The overview section reads, feeling ikigai, as described in Japanese, usually refers to the sense of accomplishment and fulfillment that follows when people pursue their passion, or passions. Multiple, plural, my bad. Activities that generate the feeling of ikigai are not imposed on an individual. They are perceived as spontaneous and undertaken willingly, making them personal and dependent on a person's inner self. And you may have come across the concept of ikigai before. It went Mr. Worldwide a few years ago as pretty much fancy packaging for a very simple message. It crash landed in the Western world as a Venn diagram, and it featured the sections: what you love, I don't know where they go, don't look at my hand, what you love, what you can be paid for, what the world needs, and what you're good at. And the idea is that you'll find something that overlaps in these categories, and then boom, that's your thing right there. It's sitting in the middle. Ikigai is on kind of the same level as like Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram test now, in the sense that it has its very own dedicated website. It acts as a personality test, and it's very much been blown out of the water in the Western world, from what I've seen anyway. And the reason I say that is because, from what I see, Ikigai has been rationalized and, I guess, oversimplified. The Wikipedia article goes on to detail that National Geographic reporter Dan, it's one of the words, I'm sorry, Dan Buettner? I'm so sorry, I did listen to it. He suggested that ikigai may be one of the reasons for the longevity of the people of Okinawa. According to Dan, Okinawans have less desire to retire and they continue doing their favourite job as long as they remain healthy. And in saying this, the writer does not mean to say that upon birth, every single Okinawan fills out this Venn diagram. They mean to say, very simply, that people who have found a reason to get up each morning have a reason to get up each morning. That's all they're saying. You just can't really think your way into finding your passion by sheer force. Instead, it comes from within. It comes from your heart. It comes from your soul. It comes from time and experience. And in saying this, I'm not saying that the ikigai Venn diagram thing, I'm not saying that that's not a good tool to use for self-discovery, or at least for brainstorming. But I am saying that I think that discovering who you are and what you like, truly and authentically, look at the sun coming out, beaming down on me as I share this nugget of wisdom. It's so stupid. I think that might be simultaneously more simple and more difficult than any guru or diagram or journal entry can make it seem. Because I think that the secret to rediscovering your real life comes from living it. I'm so sorry. So what does that mean then as far as rediscovering your real life goes? Does that mean that it's just out of your hands? Well, no, I'd say the opposite of true. I'd say that it's entirely in your hands. And just to make it difficult, it's also very much unstructured and uncontrollable and unpredictable, really. As 5 Seconds of Summer once said, "Hey, we're taking on the world. I'll take you where you want to go. Pick you up if you fall to pieces. Let me be the one to save you. Break the plans we had before. Let's be unpredictable." And doesn't it just sound like such a tempting promise to make to yourself? You just want to take the lyrics written by some 16-year-old school kid and turn it into life advice that you live by? Yeah, trust me on this one. You want to do that. Absolutely. So in the end, I think that making conscious decisions to step just a little bit out of your comfort zone or out of your familiar routine will honestly get you further than most anything else that you could do. And this is the action struggle that I was talking about earlier. Like it's so simple, but so hard to do. It's just so much easier to plan and to theorize and to question than it is to just do something. But again, I already said this, doing is how we learn. It's how we grow. And honestly, it doesn't have to be anything crazy that you do. You don't have to push yourself every single day. I don't think that's a realistic way to grow for most people. And it's also probably not the most authentic way to pursue self-discovery. It could really just mean little things, seeking out a slightly new or slightly different experience, you know, going to a different cafe or just ordering something different from the cafe that you normally go to. It could mean choosing to attend a new group. It could mean choosing to read a chapter of a book rather than sitting on your bed, scrolling on your phone. It could mean putting on a movie for an evening and putting your phone on the other side of the room. It could mean agreeing to hang out with that friend that you've been meaning to catch up with. Or it could mean bigger things. It could mean that maybe you need to address that urge that you've had for the past year to do something really different, really shake it up. You know, like maybe you want to explore a new career field. You want to study something. Maybe you want to move to a new house. Maybe you want to move to a new town. Maybe you want to adopt a pet cat. There are things that you might need to try just once. Because like the Brussels sprouts on your plate when you were a kid, how can you know that you don't like it if you haven't tried it? And then there are things that are conflicting, but you feel like maybe you should try them anyway. Like maybe you don't like spending money, but you might love collecting things. Maybe you don't like hanging out with people, but you might love having board game nights. I'd fall into this trap for sure, but if you really want to discover yourself, but then you don't allow yourself to really truly explore, then what results do you expect? What do you expect to find or to learn? And I'd be the last person to say that any of this is easy, because it's not. Like there are just some things that I feel unwilling to budge on, and most things in general I'm scared to do. Like I don't want to leave the house. But being uncomfortable is not a flaw, but rather a necessity when it comes to self-discovery, I think. And what's been helping me recently, I know this sounds ridiculous, but like I said, it's small steps, right? I'm used to spending a lot of time on the computer. So what's been helping me is to expand the content that I'm watching into also including creators that are living very authentically to themselves. A creator that I came across recently, a video from, is Pros and Petticoats, and she falls into this category. She said in her video, it was called An Old Soul's Guide to Surviving the 21st Century, that she wasn't actually able to find many people speaking about the challenges of being an old soul, as she called herself, in the modern world, which exemplifies the point that she obviously is choosing to live the lifestyle that she leads out of a genuine interest and out of genuine enjoyment rather than external factors like trends online. And then there are some creators that I know of that are currently on a journey themselves of expanding, you know, their interests, developing their social circles, growing as a person. And those people are Chiara Ivola and Isabella, babe. Oh, did I just invent the new Renesmee? Isabella DeMarco. And then there are just some genuinely normal people on there as well, like Lucille. I've been watching Lucille for years, and she's just like, it's just chill. You just go to her channel and you're like, this is just life. It's nice to watch just someone living life, genuinely. I've been finding a lot of value in watching sort of down-to-earth content when I am online, which, don't get me wrong, is still a lot. I'm still online so much. Because I find it very encouraging to see other people living in a way that is true to themselves, kind of with no deeper agenda, like just living. I really think that that's something that we need to see more of. It's something that we have the tools to see all the time, but it gets overshadowed by influencer culture and all this like scandalous pop culture news and stuff. Sometimes it's nice to just see like an imperfect normal person doing imperfect normal person things. And I think that's why we've been gravitating towards, like, I've been really enjoying watching podcasts that function as interviews of celebrities, because I feel like you see them at a more real person level. Media is definitely allowing more reality into its scope, but of course everything in media also, you have to judge it. You have to judge it from the stance of, well, this is published media. Yeah, it's been polished, you know. But I do think that that sort of like regular person energy is more so the standard that we should be holding ourselves to, and the standard that we should be holding other people to as well. Because perception is not reality, and oftentimes we perceive the most confident or the most outspoken or the most popular people to be the ideal, when really all they are is confident, outspoken, and popular. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't really help us to see a certain demographic of people and think, oh, that is the people. That is how we be people. It makes so much sense. Of course, this has probably always affected the human race to an extent. You know, like socialites existed back in the day, old Hollywood stars. But I do think that spending a lot of time online, and particularly on social media, can lead to us getting swept away by cognitive fallacies. I guess fallacies that are present in our everyday lives. They're just built into our brains, but they're just totally amplified by our online behaviors. I want to speak about them more in videos that they're very relevant in, so I won't really dive into the deep end of them today. I want to, you know, have the time to properly explore them, but I'll list some just in case you want to sort of look into it yourself. I love looking into stuff like this, so you might too. But as far as social media goes and how our brains sort of work on that, I've written down the bandwagon effect, also the framing effect, and choice overload. And then for self-discovery, I think the ambiguity effect I wrote down as being relevant. You know, searching for those concrete answers where there really isn't a concrete answer. And then also the commitment bias. And finally, the Einstein effect. I found those all on the Decision Lab. Such a fun website. They've got the best graphics, best supporting graphics in the game, and just the information that they share is so easy to digest. And these biases that we hold, right, and these effects that we experience, they're part of us, but they're not us. Of course they're built into us, but when they start to take up too much of our time and too much real estate in our mind, I think they can begin to cause some damage. They can begin to steer our step in the wrong direction. They start to taint our view on the world. And they can do that without us even sort of knowing or thinking twice about it, because they're so comfortable. They make so much sense to us. That's just how our brains work. It's so interesting. But that's why I think that it's better to acknowledge sooner rather than later when you're sort of losing touch with yourself. Because if you don't, then by the time you start taking the necessary steps to reach out and find yourself again, you're going to have such a further way to walk. It's going to be more difficult. And although the immediate rewards of disconnecting with yourself can feel so soothing and tempting and freeing, the long-term drawbacks aren't anything. But without connection to ourselves, we can feel lost and we can feel meaningless and empty. And when you reach a certain threshold of that, there's no form of escapism that's enough to fill that void. Eventually you have to face it head on. As tempting as it is, I think my best advice, the most paramount thing I've learned in counseling, is to accept things. You have to accept things before you can move past them. But other than that, try not to limit yourself. And if you don't want to do something for you now, then do it for future you. Because they need you to care about them, you know? And think, if you allow yourself to meet your full potential, I mean, you might not be like a worldwide superstar, and you might not change the world, but you might be happy, and you will almost certainly live a more fulfilled life. And isn't that enough? I don't know, with all of this said, final thoughts. As a general rule, if you're concerned about your mental health, speak to a professional. Go see your doctor and see what they can do for you. Reach out to services that you're aware of and see if you can get in their rotation. I know it's all a bit of a headache, but it's worth it. You've got to do these things for yourself. But I've finished sharing my thoughts. I don't know what thoughts are going to make it into the video. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time. But now that I'm done yapping, I'd love for you to yap a little bit. Let me know your thoughts about internet usage and social media. Let me know whether you believe that those things have shaped you as a person at all or not. And let me know what you think about rediscovering yourself in your real life. Is that something you need to do? Is that something you want to do? Do you feel like the internet has actually helped you do that? Genuinely just yap. Like, I'm really excited to see what you have to say about this. And I'm so sorry for talking your ear off. Oh, bye, I guess. I almost made it to the end of a video without my camera dying. So proud. It's alright. I guess I'll say goodbye. I hope you're having a lovely day. I really do. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope life is treating you well. And if it's not, then I hope it starts. I hope it picks up its slack and starts treating you well. And I'll let you get back to your day now. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you have a lovely day. And thank you. I might see you on my next video. Bye. I am waving, but you can't see me. Bye.